And under assault from both the left and the right, oh boy, an epic battle has just begun. Congressman Steve King says negotiations should start with one simple question: who and how many would each side deport? He's here in a moment to explain. Plus, that super secret FISA memo could be made public right before the president's State of the Union speech on Tuesday. We've got new details on what's happening on Monday, and more evidence that Bill wasn't the only Clinton mistreating women. A shocking new report about a Hillary cover-up on her 2008 presidential campaign. But first, Trump exposes the fanatics. That's the focus of tonight's angle. The president's visit to Davos was, by any measure, a smashing success. He was adored by the elites, he engaged world leaders on the sidelines, and he delivered a speech that was disciplined, serious, and unapologetic.
I will always put America first, just like the leaders of other countries should put their country first also. But America first does not mean America alone.
The president delivered a calm and reasoned defense of economic nationalism, while at the same time showing respect to our international allies. But regardless of how well the president performs, the media, they'll never give him a fair shake. It's really pathetic. Here's what some of them thought of the Davos speech.
It was quite different in tone to the more measured, I guess, what's the word, sedated, some people say.
I have never seen a lower energy level from him, where being the content was a victory lap. It was almost, I felt like he was almost going to fall asleep at some point. I was struck by the lack of verve, and I've never seen him more low energy.
Well, had the president been really animated, they would have said, he's yelling, he's shouting, he looks angry, the ugly American. He sounds like Il Duce. Now, we know this clique of journalists in D.C. and New York has never understood the appeal of Trump. They've said he's unhinged, he's ill-suited for the presidency. And remember, even before Inauguration Day, they insisted that his arrogant tone and populist policies would destroy him and the planet. Well, they portray him 24/7 as a dictator in waiting and a fanatic who demands loyalty from everyone around him. Well, that's not what the people in Davos saw. But at least now we see who the true fanatics are: the media themselves.
The breaking news: a military dictatorship. That appears to be what the White House thinks the United States is.
The impulses of a tyrant, the impulses of a dictator.
He attacks the news institutions, which is what Franco and Hitler and Mussolini and a whole bunch of other people did.
The kind of strategy that, what do you have? I mean, dictators and tyrants have used.
He's attacking the press. He calls them the enemy of the people, which is rhetoric that you usually hear from people like Mao and Stalin.
Yeah, they killed like 20 million to 60 million people, Mao and Stalin, but just the same as Trump. Oh my gosh, these people are simply slavish adherents to a worldview that is elitist, and they're addicted to policies that are frankly growing more unpopular around the world as the days, weeks, and months go on. And I'll say this, very few of them have the professionalism to step back for just a minute and absorb the positive news that the Trump presidency has actually created for America. Now, aside from the rare ABC headline, like, why aren't more news organizations heralding the news on jobs, economic growth, soaring consumer confidence, the good news for African Americans, Latino Americans? Because it works against their own worldview, that's why. Now, think about it this way. Imagine if the opposite had occurred. If Trump had presided over an economic downturn. Now, they would have said, we told you, Trump is going to destroy the world. These same reporters and pundits would have pounced on his conservative populism and blamed Trump for the derailment of the Obama recovery. It's so transparent. No wonder the media's approval and the ratings keep falling. But I'll tell you this, the media aren't the only rabid fanatics that Trump and his agenda have exposed. Just look at the reaction over the past 24 hours to the president's immigration reform and DACA plan. Now, last week, remember, he was set to offer 800,000 DACA recipients amnesty in exchange for border security and end-to-chain migration, visa lottery, etc. Well, the Democrats rejected that deal, and they shut down the government. It blew up in Chuck Schumer's face. So this week, after working with a broad group of senators, the president has widened the amnesty pool to 1.8 million illegal immigrants. That's a million jump. Now, this move, truth be told, has agitated the president's base quite a bit. Their opinions were expressed on my radio show today, and they were overwhelmingly critical.
If Trump goes through with this like this, he could very well lose my vote in 2020.
If he does that, he's committing political suicide. Not only is he going to demoralize his base, he's also going to kill the Republican Party. If he continues to pursue this, he's clearly lost me as a voter. I don't see the difference between him and Obama.
I did not vote for Trump for him to do this, and I will not vote for him again if he does that.
That's interesting. Do you notice there were a number of Hispanic voters in that montage that we just put together? Fascinating. Now, everyone knows that this is not the plan that I was hoping for, and certainly not the one that I think Republicans in the Senate should agree to. But what's happening is the president is taking this risky gambit in an effort to finally get common sense immigration controls in place. And what he's thinking, I believe, is that we have to end this massive influx of immigrants into the United States who are admitted without regard for need or merit, what they're going to bring to the country. And we also must stop the wave of humanity, illegal immigrants, busting across our southern border every year, only to stay for however long they want. Now, like it or not, that's the administration's thought process. We'll see how it all works out. Unfortunately, Republicans do not have the votes in the Senate for Congressman Bob Goodlatte's bill, which I believe is much better. It's ridiculous that the Senate's not embracing that. So what the president did is he actually moved toward the middle in this immigration compromise. Again, not where I would be, but I'm just telling you the way it is. When he did that, he enraged his supporters, and he perhaps even risks his own reelection by doing that. So think about that. He did all that. And what are the Democrats saying in reaction?
Let me just say what I said last night. That plan is a campaign to make America white again.
If you start putting in all of these highly charged, toxic issues, it's just not going to work.
I don't even know what that comment meant. But these people are total fanatics. They are fanatical for open borders and endless migration of low-skilled labor purely for political purposes. And we didn't even tell you what Chuck Schumer said yet. Now, as I said earlier this week, Democrats believe that they have to repeal and replace the American electorate who voted for Trump and continue to vote for Republicans nationwide. They have to get rid of those voters, or at least swamp them with new voters. So Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, Durbin, et cetera, they have to keep their grievance society growing and their identity politics racket going. They have to do this, they believe, in order to win elections in the future, because otherwise, what are they going to say? The economy's thriving. Country's doing really well. They have no ideas. I think they're out of the ideas business altogether. All they believe in is division, identity politics, the blame game, calling Trump a dictator. That's all they have. And if this all means, by the way, this immigration view that they have, if it means like lowering the standard of living for the average working person, the average citizen, by allowing in all these new low-skilled workers, well, so be it. And for the Democrats, if that means continuing to resist Trump, even when his policies are actually benefiting Democratic voters, so be it. I am telling you, these people are dangerous fanatics. And it is they, not President Trump, who end up destabilizing and destructive forces in the body politic. He's exposed them like no one has before. And that's the angle. All right, well, we're going to talk to Congressman Steve King in just a moment. And he's well known for his, hardline stances on immigration. He he believes in what Trump campaigned on, which is you got to build a wall, you got to end chain migration, you got to end immigration based just on family ties. It has to be merit-based, and it has to be great for the American people. We also have humanitarian concerns for people who are truly in need. We've always been welcoming to those people. But that also has to be done with an eye toward common sense. In other words, refugees who come into the country who would not really meld with the American understanding or appreciate our views on non-discrimination and so forth, that would not work. And Congressman King supported the president precisely because of his immigration views, along with a few other issues. And joining us now, without further ado, is Congressman Steve King. And we're delighted he's joining us from Iowa, I believe. Congressman, how are you? Good to see you.
Doing just fine. Right in my living room, Laura. It's terrific.
Oh,
I
great.
appreciate the chance to be on tonight and your monologue.
All right, let's talk.
Next time. You've been out in my neighborhood before, and I appreciated that.
Fantastic. Let's talk about the president's plan. The 4 pillars of it were announced late yesterday. It's a change from a week ago where it was 800,000 DACA recipients would have a pathway eventually to citizenship. Moved on from that to 1.8 million, kept the other elements basically in place, Congressman. An end to chain migration, $25 billion for the border wall and security, which is good stuff. And the visa lottery system would be kind of replaced, would be used, those 50,000, to end the family and merit-based backlog of legal immigrants who've been applying and waiting for years and years. Tell us what your biggest concern is with this, and could you ever support an amnesty that would lead to a reduction in legal immigration?
You know, I haven't seen the plan that would get me to supporting an amnesty under any of these circumstances, but I do recognize the value of the Goodlatte bill, which now looks like this proposal blocks. But the numbers are just stunning to see that President Trump has proposed 1.8 million amnesty to illegals. And, you know, I'm very familiar with his immigration policy. I told him one day that I market tested your immigration policy in Iowa for 14 years, and that's the reason that he's president of the United States today. I think that this will demoralize so very many of his supporters. And how do we get back now to a place where we need to be with this? And by the way, he had a mandate to end DACA, a mandate for a wall, a mandate to end chain migration, a mandate to end the visa lottery. We can go on with this. And why they're matched up against each other, negotiating against himself, is very troubling to me. And I think that seeing the Democrats turn against it, the one thing he's accomplishing is he's convincing the American people of the real truth, which is Democrats don't care about solving this problem. They want this problem to exploit it politically and to bring more and more people into the United States that'll be on their side of the political ledger.
I mean, I do think he has exposed them. You know, it's not the plan I would want. And I'm for the Goodlatte bill. I think that would be a great path forward. But let's listen to what Mercedes Schlapp said. I should say before we play it, we invited any White House official onto the show tonight. We were told we were going to have one, and then they pulled him at the last minute. So I want to hear from the White House on this. I'd like to interview the president on this. You know, obviously he just came back tonight, but we hope to have someone on Monday. But let's listen to what Mercedes said from the White House earlier today. Let's watch.
Clearly, it needs to be a bipartisan bill. If we would clearly have a 60 votes with Republicans that would support this, it would be a lot easier. We are not, the Congress is not in that position. So this is why you need a compromise on immigration. But clearly, from the standpoint of the White House, it is clear, as the president has said time and time again, there needs to be a wall. If there is no wall, there is no DACA.
Congressman, your response. It has to get to 60 votes in the Senate. Well, Goodlatte bill would be dead on arrival. A number of senators told me that today. Would not pass. So what do you say?
Well, the best part of that statement is no wall, no deal. We must have the wall. The most important reason we need to have the wall is because walls don't have prosecutorial discretion. Even a subsequent president will have a hard time tearing down a wall.
But you get the wall
if
in
we
this
invest
deal,
in one and build
Congressman.
it.
You get the wall in the deal. You end chain migration. Chain migration is 400,000 people a year. So in 5 years, you would have more than the 1.8 million amnesty of new family-based migration that's gone. So in 5 years, you would already swamp that 1.8 number, exceed it, and the cuts would still keep coming. So I don't see that you're going to get a cut in legal family chain migration without some sort of amnesty. Maybe not this big, but without some sort of amnesty,
well,
I just don't see it.
Well, Laura, here's what this establishes, though. If the president serves up 1.8 million people for an amnesty in exchange for $25 billion for a wall, and then reduces the numbers of chain migration that come in, that's the end of his enforcement that he's going to get in his administration, unless we come up with another amnesty to serve it up, because he will have established that precedent. And by the way, this is a sacrifice of the rule of law. This says, in your lifetime or in mine, we will never see the respect for the rule of law restored again. And that's what I've been working at since 1986, when this mistake was made then by Ronald Reagan.
Really
that lessons there in front of us. It's the same debates. And it's a debate today is the same as it was in 86. It hasn't changed.
Now, rule of law has got to be respected. I completely agree with you on that. Let's just very quickly, we're almost out of time. This is what some of the left-wing advocates have said today in response to 1.8 million. Listen to this. The White House released a hateful, xenophobic immigration proposal, the ACLU. The Huffington Post writer, it's a little more than a racist ransom note from a group of nativists. America's Voice, they think they're offering up a spoonful of sugar. They can get Congress and the American people to swallow the bitter medicine of radical nativism. United We Dream says, let's call this proposal what it is, a white supremacist ransom note. Now, come on. The left is so over the top in the response. Trump has exposed them as fanatics. And my listeners are enraged. I can tell you that, Congressman. They can't even believe what they're hearing. Yep. But the practical understanding of all of this is you don't have 60 Steve Kings in the Senate. You don't have 60 Steve Kings who are going to vote for cloture on an immigration proposal. It's just not going to happen. I wish we did. I wish we had more people that believed in the rule of law.
And I looked around here a week ago, Laura, and I had a hard time finding anybody. Now that coalition's growing. So thanks a lot for doing this tonight. I appreciate it.
All right, we appreciate it. And by the way, Congressman, we could be on the verge of a stunning game changer in the Russia investigation. But the forces aligned against President Trump are fighting back. Our panel of experts will tell you up next what to expect. Do not touch that dial.
Political campaign. And I don't care what your political affiliation is, you should be terrified that something like that could happen. And that bar needs to be set. This in itself is a terrifying idea, because you already seeing people that keep moving the goalposts in this about what counts as shocking or what counts as scandalous. This just needs to be viewed as bad in and of itself if that's the case.
Well, let's move on to the effect that this might have had on the morale at the FBI. We've been hearing a lot from Democrats, who usually are big critics of law enforcement, especially on the state level, who say, well, the scrutiny of the FBI and this relentless criticism is going to hurt FBI retention, and it's going to shake the public's confidence in this institution. Mr. Gavin, you're an FBI veteran. Your view on that?
Those kinds of things are stated, Laura, simply to further their own cause and their own belief. The bottom line is the fine men and women of the FBI will go on doing their job day after day and do it in a superior manner. Their badges are not tarnished by the actions of somebody else. Their badges are as shiny as ever. The only badges tarnished out of this whole thing are the badges of the people that performed in a horrible manner, if in fact that's provable. And I go back to what Kim said, this whole thing of the problem with the predication for the application for a FISA warrant. If that's a problem, when it appears that it probably is, that's atrocious because it puts in jeopardy future FISA warrants going before FISA judges and courts. And that's going to be a real problem.
Mr. Gavin, it makes it all seem political. This is supposed to be an agency getting to the truth, balls and strikes, objective. We start using the FBI for political hit jobs, and then, you know, all bets are off. And that to me is really disturbing. I mean, I lived in the old Soviet Union as a student. That's what they did there. And so they like to call Trump a little dictator, and oh, he's a dictator. He's an autocrat. I find this to be much closer to police state tactics than anything they've accused him of. And Congressman, I'm going to go back to you on this. The fact that we still have agents working and investigators, lawyers working in this investigation with such clear, at least the appearance of a conflict and a conflict of interest, appearance of partisanship and animus toward the president, after everything we've learned, is stunning. Whether it's Jeannie Rhee or whether it's Andrew Weissman or any of these other people, that they're still in the investigation. That's amazing.
Well, and one of the things I can say about this intelligence memo is that names are named. And so we're going to be able to see who is engaged in conduct that has shocked me and so many of my colleagues in the Congress. And I think that the result of all of this should be bipartisan legislation to actually reform these processes so that you don't have these folks sticking around after bad acts. You've got more oversight, more transparency, and then we can restore confidence in the FBI and Department of Justice. Look, we don't enjoy beating up on these entities that are essential to preserve our democracy. We just want to see them work for the American people, not for the interests of a political party that's trying to do a hatchet job on someone who's been elected president of the United States.
And Kimberly, before we let you go, the move to focus on whether Trump was
there are conflicts, whether or not there is bias, and whether or not that is a cause for any sort of action. The important thing is he didn't take action in the end. And so now we've spent 2 days talking about a thought that went through President Trump's head. And we keep hearing from critics of the president that the right or conservatives engage in diversionary tactics. I think there ought to be a little bit of self-reflection there, because the discussion we're having at the moment is what happened in 2016 in terms of the FBI. The Mueller investigation continues unimpeded, and now we need a little bit of truth within that agency and the Department of Justice.
All right. And all of you, breaking just moments ago, Hillary Clinton responding to a sexual assault scandal that she reportedly ignored during her 2008 campaign. We'll tell you what she's saying now, and a lot more coming up. Great segment. Back with some breaking news. Today, the New York Times reported that Hillary Clinton protected a senior campaign advisor back in 2008, her faith consultant, Bernd Strider. He's accused of sexually harassing a female coworker. According to 8 former campaign officials, Clinton's campaign manager recommended firing Strider back in 2008. Instead, Hillary reportedly docked his pay and sent him to counseling. And Hillary Clinton just tweeted out her first public response to the story, writing, "A story appeared today about something that happened in 2008. I was dismayed when it occurred, but was heartened the young woman came forward, was heard, and had her concerns taken seriously and addressed. I called her today to tell her how proud I am of her and to make sure she knows what all women should. We deserve to be heard." That's not my best Hillary impersonation, but I do a better one. Let's get reaction from radio host, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce in New York. And here in Washington with me is Jose Aristimuño, former DNC deputy press secretary. I love saying it, Aristimuño. I like saying it correctly. Great to see both of you. All right. Hey. Tammy, I'm going to give you the first bite of the apple with Hillary. I mean, she makes the statement on Twitter. Fine. Everybody has a right to be heard. That does not change the underlying point here that in the campaign itself, she was put on notice as his conduct. Get rid of him.
Yeah.
And she decided to protect him.
From both her national campaign director and the campaign manager told her to fire him. If Hillary, in calling this young woman, which also might have been seen as an effort at intimidation, because she apparently has not called her in the last 10 years, because this happened during the 2008 campaign, if Hillary really wants all women to be heard, she should remove the non-disclosure agreements that everyone in that campaign is burdened by, including this young woman. In addition, did she apologize for removing that young woman from her position and out of that man's purview, while just, again, docking his pay, as you noted, but she was removed from her job and placed in a different job, but she was the one who had to make the adjustment. And after all of this time, this young woman has not been able to speak up. As you've mentioned, the New York Times spoke with 8 people, and this is the other underlying lead, Laura, is that all these people knew, not just through the 2008 campaign, but then through Obama's 8 years, and then through the 2016 campaign, which many people say was the inspiration in a certain way for the Me Too movement. And Hillary didn't just not fire him. She resisted the requests of other women on that campaign to do that.
Jose, let's go to you on this. Hillary has had a history of protecting men who get in trouble. Obviously, her husband being the most important one. But then remember what happened with Juanita Broderick. She actually, according to Juanita, who alleged that the president, former President Clinton, many years ago raped her, sexually assaulted her, that Hillary actually added to the intimidation and basically, you know, said to her, we don't want to make this a big deal. The bimbo eruptions that James Carville talked about, we got to put those down. And now this. How does she come off as this great champion of women and, as Tammy said, kicking off the Me Too movement with this history?
Well, look, let's first of all, talking about what happened in 2008, I can't speak in detail because, you know, we don't have all the evidence.
Well, 8 people, 8 women.
But I can tell you this.
8 women.
If it's true, Laura, no one should be protected. If you've committed any... No one should be protected. If you've committed any sort of sexual misconduct, you should not be protected. I mean, period.
I don't know what happened with this guy, by the way. I mean, I'm loath to say that because one person accused another person, that it's definitely true, because we know memories fade, people have grievances. But if it's a number of people who either knew this contemporaneously or not, then it's serious. But if it's one person, I'm not willing to throw people right overboard, because I don't think that's fair to men or women, but continue.
Look, if this allegation is true and it appears that it could be true, I don't care if you're Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, right? We know our president has done plenty of that, right? You should not be protected.
So in the end, the Me Too movement has to sacrifice liberal heroes at times, correct? Like Harvey Weinstein. Obviously, it's interesting that Harvey Weinstein and Hillary, best pals. I mean, he supported the Clintons for years, raised millions of dollars for them. So Harvey Weinstein, Bill Clinton's problems, now Hillary alleged to have covered up another instance of sexual abuse. I mean, again, her first being with her husband, standing by her man, going after the bimbo eruption, and now this. How can that lead to the Me Too hashtag movement after Donald Trump wins? I just find that to be an odd trajectory.
Well, I think it's a little bit different. Just because some of these folks who have done some horrible things have donated to the Democratic Party and have given us millions of dollars doesn't make us the bad guys. Doesn't mean that we agree with everything that they have done.
Yeah, we should say Steve Wynn has been accused of wrongdoing, who's now the RNC finance chair and pal of Donald Trump's. That came out today, and there's multiple allegations of wrongdoing on his part. So there's a lot to be answered for. Okay, last night, guys, I don't know if you saw it, but I interviewed Vicente Fox, who was a lot of fun, by the way, former president of Mexico, very colorful guy. He has adopted 4 kids, so he's near and dear to my heart for that. We don't agree on anything else, however. And he said this. I wanted to ask him about borders. Do borders matter? Should we even have a border with Mexico? He's a huge critic of the president, said very nasty things about the president, but let's watch. Should we have any border with Mexico at this point? Do we need a border? Really?
No, there is no choice.
Okay. But you would prefer not to have a border? Okay, so we shouldn't have a border.
God didn't create borders.
So he basically said, Tammy, I got him to say, well, no, not really. We shouldn't have a border.
Yeah.
He wouldn't answer whether he had a fence at his own house, by the way.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Your questions were perfect because he wasn't going to answer anything. And for his adopted kids, they're learning that they should just learn how to ask really good questions because Daddy won't really answer straightly with whatever it is they want to know. But look, that's the key, is that he doesn't have answers when pushed. Of course, he doesn't answer because any normal conventional answer would reinforce what the president wants. But your questions, though, as a result, were great in that they expose that lack of an ability for him to answer a basic thing like, do you have a fence at your house? When you refuse to answer that, you know that you're on the wrong side.
Jose.
We're a nation of laws. We're a nation of immigrants. Of course, we need borders, but we need to do it in a humane way, plain and simple.
Well, we might have a see-through wall after all.
Sure.
Might be a wall that you see through. Don't explain. I'm not going to explain that. But hey, guys,
Why not?
Happy Friday. Great to see both of you.
Same
and
to
by
you.
the way, guys, what's the difference between Donald Trump and Jeb Bush? Well, we're going to demonstrate with some examples from the last 24 hours. Jeb is back. An interview this afternoon. We actually ran into him earlier tonight. It's a little uncomfortable. And he's again lashing out at the president. Well, to compare and contrast this interview with the president's performance at Davos, we're joined by Fox News contributor Ramon Arroyo.
Oh, I like that.
Ramon Arroyo. Yes, I'm into my Spanish tonight. Okay, this was Jeb Bush today. USA Today interviewed him. Let's watch.
Who's the head of the Republican Party right now, in your view?
Well, it has to be the president.
Took you a second.
Well, I mean, he's not. He doesn't represent. I don't think he's a traditional conservative.
Was he confused by the question?
Well,
who's the leader of the party? And I can't imagine why he got the nickname Low Energy.
Here's my first question.
Well,
why are they even talking to Jeb Bush now? Is Carly Fiorina and Governor Gilmore going to make an appearance next? I mean, what are the qualifications? The president is triumphing at Davos, and but they're interviewing poor Jeb, and this is part of the reason he lost. And it's so
okay,
it breaks my heart.
I like him.
He's a lovely man.
He was a great governor of Florida. We saw him tonight.
He's a gentleman, a school choice advocate, and I have to tell you,
okay, that's
he's
enough.
really good at that. But
okay,
let me move on.
He's mean to Trump all the time.
But look at the optics. He's sitting in a middle school library on a child's chair, and he looks like he's being schooled by the principal. It's very sad.
Okay, now
Trump would never allow himself.
Oh no. So compare and contrast that with Donald Trump today.
I think we're doing a very special job, and I really believe it was time. And it was time to do that job, because I don't think the United States would have done very well if it went through 4 or 8 more years of regulation and really a very anti-business group of people. In 1 year, we've cut more regulations in my administration than any other administration in 4, 8, or 16 years in the one case. And we have a ways to go. I mean, we're probably 50% done.
You see him dominating. He did this all the few days he was at Davos. He dominated every
He does seem a little bit subdued, but I kind of like the
sober and in command of the material. This is
okay, but Raymond, you're comparing poor Jeb Bush in a middle school library to Donald Trump with all the Globe's billionaires. That's not exactly an equal playing field. Okay, one more. This is Jeb Bush on Trump's rhetoric.
Oh. I don't think he will succeed if he continues on this path. I just don't see a good outcome with all of the rhetoric, all the hateful comments. But that ultimately is going to drag down the positive things that he and his team are doing.
I don't know.
David Brooks and
why would he do
David
this?
Frum or
why does he do this before midterms? The fact is, Jeb Bush was saying Billy Bush was going to kill President Trump. They said that Judge Curiel comments were going to kill him. He rose and won the party. Support him.
Yeah, he went on to say Trump needs to focus on creating income that's rising for Americans and keeping America. What has he been doing?
I don't know.
What has he been doing?
Well, Jeb Bush at this point is like Elton John and Cher. They keep announcing the retirement, but they won't go away. So I'm waiting for the Jim Gilmore and George Pataki interviews from USA Today.
Okay.
Bring us those gripping of primary candidates that also lost.
No
Very
one will
sad.
call you low energy Ramon.
I won't be low energy
No.
Ramon.
Oh my God! I'm never doing an interview in a middle school library.
Don't do it.
Never.
Never on those low chairs.
No,
you know,
it's not good.
with Harry Potter.
No,
in
no.
it. It never works.
All right.
It's all
Well,
the credibility away.
Jeb Bush lost when the GOP voters rejected the Bush dynasty in 2016. But Democrats apparently didn't get the message, Ramon, because you won't believe who they've now picked as their fresh face for the future. Another political dynasty reboot, and Crystal Carrington and Blake won't show up for it. Coming up. Democrats have hitched their wagon to the Me Too movement, championed minorities, railed against tax cuts as a giveaway to the rich. And now they have anointed a fresh new face to speak for their party. Who is this figure who could lead them into the future? Another Kennedy, a member of that grand dynasty of rich, privileged womanizers. Well, as bad ideas go, this one's even worse than another Clinton. Yes, Democratic leaders are giddy over the selection of Congressman Joe Kennedy to deliver the Democratic response to the President's State of the Union address on Tuesday. Nothing screams "we're with the people" like ridiculing bonuses and then trotting out a Kennedy to make the case. And how's this for a Me Too candidate? The nephew of notorious womanizer JFK, and of course, dear Uncle Ted's contribution to the women's movement can be summed up in one word: Chappaquiddick. And get this, much of the party hierarchy seems to be in lockstep. Nancy Pelosi remarking, "Congressman Kennedy profoundly understands the challenges facing hardworking men and women across the country." This from a woman who derided the massive bonuses and pay hikes across the Trump economy, about 3 million Americans. She called them crumbs. But I guess the elites in San Fran and those who stroll about the Kennedy compound playing touch football, well, they are just crumbs. Good luck winning over the American people with a member of another discredited dynasty. My friends, the future is with the people. It's not with the old political families that ran the country almost into the ground and that the country is tired of. The American people want ideas that work. Not enough to be a celebrity and a name. Solutions matter. And we have a lot to get to still in our last segment. Stay with us. Today, ICE announced a 3-day operation that led to the arrest of 86 criminal aliens and immigration fugitives in North Texas and Oklahoma. The prior criminal histories of those caught include everything from sexually exploiting a minor to manufacturing meth. It's great to see ICE empowered to do their jobs. That's all we have time for now. We'll see you back here on Monday. Shannon Bream is up next. Have a great